Liked by the sound of violence.
Well, the main one is Warrior. You know, and I think that came closest to not being cheesy, because the problem is with a lot of MMA movies, I don't know why this is, but they just seem so cringe, and because the directors or the people involved, they're trying to portray what the image of MMA that they perceive. You know what I'm saying? And in my opinion, even Warrior, which was a good movie, I haven't seen all of it. I've seen most of it. I actually fell asleep, but it was okay. It was all right. But still, I don't feel that any MMA movie so far has captured the real essence of the fighter's journey and the training and the lead up to the fight and the emotions that they go through. I in my opinion, they all suck.
Different generation, are you excited about it all?
What up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast to let you know the MMA podcasts you should catch, skip, and can't miss each week, as well as we try and check out a new show. I am Pulver, and I am back yet again, finally, for an MMA card with my co-host, Chris Daffer. How's it going, man?
Dude, I was doing well, man. I'm clearly on my phone. I have a stand for my phone. You can clearly tell, right?
That's right. Hey, we finally got Chris's setup working again for the moment.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll last the whole show.
Yeah, I fucking hope so.
Fingers crossed. But I'm excited to be back in format, man. It's been nice having the 2 weeks off from all the goddamn MMA, the flood of MMA podcasts that we deal with every week. But I'm excited to get back into it. There was actually a lot of good shows over the break. A lot of people took time off, kind of did recap shows, or not recap, but they like re-release shows, that kind of stuff. But overall, there was definitely some good ones.
Yeah, and it was nice to be back in person doing a commentary.
That's right.
Last weekend, that was fun.
Yeah, actually,
that was hilarious.
I believe that got posted yesterday because I've been dealing with nothing but straight chaos this week. But yeah, that commentary was a goddamn blast, and I highly recommend people go check it out. Actually, as you guys heard on our intro this week,
I can hear you fine. Fine.
Jesus Christ, we're fucking burning it all down. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and jump into format before my whole setup decides to fucking go against me again. So before we jump into MMA podcasts and all that, why don't we start off with the Doug Stanhope? God damn it, it's been 2 weeks off and I fuck it up again. Papa Vodka presents Doug Stanhope presents our sponsor. AKA, what the fuck you drinking this week?
I am drinking again. I think this appeared maybe a couple months back. New English Brewing's Blueberry Blonde.
Yeah, that's a really high seller for them.
Yeah, I know they did a deal, and my mom told me this because she works at Trader Joe's. You can get Blueberry Blonde now at Trader Joe's. I think they sell them like individual cans for like $2 too.
Oh, wow.
Pretty good deal. And I think it's crazy. Like everywhere else I've seen, I know like at Jimbo's, I think it's like $12 for a 6-pack, but apparently at Trader Joe's it's like $8.50. I don't know what the fuck kind of deal they got going on, but if you like Trader Joe's, you can get it there for a good fucking price. So,
yeah, I know that Preferred Liquors out here in Santee always has real good deals on. I couldn't have paid more than like $10 or $11 for a 6-pack of Zoom Bar. So, and that is a big ass coffee stout. So, I am that's what's up. I've only had the Blueberry Blonde I think once, and it was a while back. I need to have it again.
Yeah, it's I've only been drinking their brewery, I think, just this year, and they've been one of my favorite probably breweries of the year. Them and McKellar, and fuck, who else? What's one of my? I'm trying to think of all of my favorite beers I've had this year. One I just tried yesterday, and I know this is for all the I guess, beer snobs and beer hipsters out there. You know how for Russian River, it's all about Pliny, or, oh, no, man, you know what's better? Blind Pig. I know you've heard that.
Yeah.
And then I saw someone comment, oh, no, you know what's better than those two? Happy Hops. So I went to Crest and on Balboa, and I was like, oh, shit, they got Happy Hops. And you know what? It's really fucking good.
Nice.
And I definitely see why that person commented it's better than both. Like, it's really good. It's like, damn.
Well, I mean, it
Just
makes
like
sense.
always one of those.
Those other two are real old school West Coast IPAs.
Yeah, it's that's. I feel like and there's nothing wrong with those old school West Coast IPAs, but I feel like they're kind of phasing out.
Yeah,
There's so much better stuff you can do to them now.
Yeah, they're a time and place kind of thing. Like they definitely are still fantastic, but like when you hear West Coast or especially San Diego IPA or like California IPA nowadays, you definitely don't immediately think like those super piney old school bitter IPAs like that. So yeah, man, that's cool. I still, by the way, everybody's wrong. The best Russian River is Supplication. It's the blue one with the cherry. It's the sour with cherries added. It's
Ooh.
real goddamn good.
Where the fuck do you get that?
Good. It's around, or at least it
Okay.
used to be around pretty consistently. I know Jimbo's and Par used to carry it quite a bit. I don't know if they still
Okay.
do. But yeah,
I'm going to
that's
find
a
that.
goddamn beer. But actually, speaking of sours, I am drinking on a beer that I am really excited about. This is from Full Circle Brewing Company. It is from their Hip Hop Puree series, which, by the way, Hip Hop Puree is a great fucking name.
That's pretty good.
And this is the Pie of the Tiger sour, which is a mixed berry pie sour, which I'm real fucking excited to try because they did a whole hip hop series. They did this one. They did Juicy. They did what was the fucking hop one? I just looked it up. Captain Save a Hop was the other one.
That's fucking great.
Oh shit, this is delicious. Holy fuck, you can taste the pie crust.
Wait, what kind of beer are you drinking right now? You said it's a sour?
Yeah, so it's a sour. They call it a mixed berry pie sour.
Ooh.
So essentially they used a lot of like pie spice. Like
And who's this from again?
Full Circle Brewing. This is fucking delicious.
Full Circle.
It's just like
I'm gonna look that up right
a
now.
dark berry sour, but with like a lot of like pie seasonings and not like very very light baker cinnamon kind of flavor, that kind of stuff. Maybe like a touch of nutmeg.
Oh, shit.
Man, that's fucking delicious. Oh my god.
What's
Sorry,
it called
that caught me
again?
off guard.
Captain Save a Hop?
No, Pie of the Tiger.
Pie of the Tiger.
Yeah, it's really goddamn good. It's got to be like 4%, right?
Dang, this
6%.
is really good reviews.
Yeah, it's goddamn delicious. I highly, highly recommend people go check that out.
These guys are in. Oh, they're from Fresno. Okay. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, that's cool. They have it at the. Someone had it at the McKellar Bar in San Francisco.
Oh, that's
cool.
what's up. Yeah, I know. I know if you're in San Diego, which is probably nobody listening, they have it at Jimbo's. They have it at Preferred. I think a lot of places in California will get the series because it's pretty popular from what I've seen. But yeah, that's fucking delicious. I've tried the other ones now, but man, that is one of the best sour, like especially like desserty sours I've had.
Yeah, apricot pie sour. Fuck, that sounds good.
Yeah. This one I think is actually mixed berry, but yeah, it's fucking delicious.
Someone's review is tight.
Yeah, that fucking checks out, dude.
Yeah.
It's fucking tight. All right. Anyway, now that I made a dumb eye of the fucking tiger joke, it's definitely time to move on to the actual top part where we don't just talk about beer. Despite my best efforts to make this a booze podcast, just like every podcast should be a booze podcast as far as I'm concerned. But on that note, let's go ahead and jump into our normal format. Oh, I should mention first off, before we get into it, I didn't hear a ton of MMA podcast news over the break. Angie Hill hinted that she might be starting a podcast, which would be cool. I know that I know that Two Straws is pretty much on hiatus, kind of like Aussie Fancy is for the time being, but it'd be cool to see her have one here going forward. And then the other big news is, of course, as we hinted at, I think 3 weeks ago. Pull No Punches just put out their final episode this week, which I'll talk about a bit later, but it's a bummer to see them no longer around, but it sounds like they may come back down the line when they have more time. So, some interesting news, but you figure, especially on a holiday break and everything, not a ton of news coming out of MMA podcasts for the time being. I have a feeling we're going to start hearing a lot more in the next couple weeks as the year wraps up.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. That's when kind of everyone. Some people do a massive recap. I know we'll do one again, I assume.
Yeah, we have our award show coming up here probably early January.
Yeah.
Since that takes me like 3 weeks to put everything together, so.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about it. I always love those things. Just because they're dumb and a lot of fun. And it gives me a good excuse to go listen to a lot of the great podcasts from the last year, so. Anyway, now that we got through all that, why don't we jump into format and get this shit going? Chris, why don't you start us off with the MMA podcast you recommend people catch this week?
Let's see. I like the MMA Vivisection, if I could speak English. Vivisection was good. I know every time I mention this or Heavy Hands, it's kind of more or less something we can plug for our previous segment, but it was good, and so I'll mention that. I think I'll say for the catch, MMA Roadshow. I don't know if he had more than one episode this week. I think he just had
the one where he's out in Dallas.
Yeah, at his parents' house or his dad's house. That was a good one because I remember I had seen a promo for it on Instagram. There was a grappling tournament that Luke Rockhold was in.
Yeah, Polaris.
And Polaris, yeah. You talked about that. Sakuraba.
245.
Yeah, he grappled. Gomi grappled against him. Uriah Faber grappled someone.
No, I think
or is that in the
Faber
past?
one's coming up.
That's coming up.
Because I know they had.
He was saying based on the tournament bracket, if Faber beats his opponent and someone else loses, there's a very real chance that Faber can grapple against Josh Barnett, which would be hilarious.
Yeah, I think that was the last not Polaris, the last quintet. And then the next quintet is the one where there's a WEC team, a Pride team, a Strikeforce team, and a UFC team. And they're all basically going to be going at it, which is going to be wild. There are some super fun matchups that are going to happen at that. I know guys like Cub Swanson and Uriah and Sakuraba and everybody are all involved. Gilbert Melendez, I think.
Ooh, okay. You figured someone like Dylan Dennis would at least go to one of those, right? Or is he still kind of like, I don't know how Bellator's guys, I don't know if they're free to kind of...
I don't know that Dylan Dennis does much, except for competing jiu-jitsu, like actual jiu-jitsu competitions, not like submission based.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was...
Quintet has kind of crazy rules and stuff, too. Plus, Dylan Dennis would have to have 4 people who would be on a team with him, which I think is a pretty tall order.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay. Then, there was just more and more talk about... I only maybe listened to like 3/4 of this, but he talked about, was it Colby Covington? Oh, yeah, he made some comments. I forgot about that, about Glenn Robinson.
Yeah, he said, I believe the quote is, Glenn Robinson's going to be watching Marty Usman lose from hell. I think it was something along those lines.
Like, come on, dude, what the fuck? Like I get it, but it's
so unnecessary.
Really, it's just stupid. Like, come on. Say Glenn Robinson's like daughters or family, they're like, we have to defend our father's image and reputation. It's like, it's your family member. You don't look some asshole just talking shit just to promote his fight. And then John Morgan was talking about, like Colby's a great guy. It's like, dude, we already know it's an act. I'm sure he's a really cool guy when he's not on the fucking camera, but it's like, dude, you kind of have to realize you got to pump the brakes in your act. You can't just like say outrageous shit. Like, what's next after that? You say some racist shit, and then you're like, oops, it's my act.
I mean, he's about as close as you can be without saying anything racist. He's real fucking close.
By the way, the one thing, and I'll admit, I'm excited to preview the pay-per-view next week. but admittedly, I'm not a fan of either Colby or Kamaru. Just because when they talk shit to each other, it's really bad and difficult to listen to. Because Colby's is an act, it's not even really Colby, and Kamaru is just kind of cringy. But what did he say? He said, one thing Colby said that was kind of funny. He says, Marty, you're representing Ethiopia. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't care what anyone says.
Jesus.
It's stupid as fuck, but it's kind of funny.
That dude loves puns more than my girlfriend does. That is ridiculous.
Ethiopia. Like,
That's
damn it.
Fucking dumb. Such a dumb pun. Oh, my God. That's brutal.
And then John said one thing that was interesting is to note CB Dollaway and David Branch are both currently serving suspensions from USADA. However, CB Dollaway is fighting in Ryzen. I think he's fighting for a light heavyweight title fight, which is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think he's fighting Yuri Prochazka, which is, wow. I don't know what the fuck Ryzen is doing with that matchmaking.
And then David Branch is fighting in Russia. I can't remember what promotion.
Yeah, probably ACA or whatever the fuck they rebranded to. I don't remember.
So long as it's not that piece of shit, what is it,
I think
Akhmat?
that's the one, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. Akhmat's the one that's directly tied to Kadyrov. ACA is the one
that's what I'm saying.
Kind of tied to Kadyrov. So, yeah.
Where's a Frank Castle when you need him? Whoa, that's good.
Yeah, man, that was a good episode. John also, it was cool hearing John talk about how he's excited. He's kind of getting back into watching jiu-jitsu and stuff more that now that his kid's competing in it.
Yeah, and he said Roxanne Modafferi is actually coaching his son, which I thought was cool at Syndicate.
Yeah, she's supposed to be like the best kids coach at Syndicate. That kids class at Syndicate is supposed to be like the dopest thing.
Well, she just got like that infectious energy too, and I already know probably all those kids love Dragon Ball and all the other stuff she embraces.
Well, she taught Japanese for a while too, I think. Didn't she?
Yeah, I think she lived in Japan and taught English. Yeah, I believe so. Yes, that's probably where you're just surrounded by that. I mean, yeah, I would immediately be kind of engulfed in that culture too.
Yeah,
I think it makes it fun.
Yeah, she seems like she would make everything fun. So.
By the way, I was thinking of I forgot. Someone told me, you know how you can go to the DMV and you can like re-update your license or shit like that, your contact information. Someone was telling me that technically it costs money to legally change your last name, but if you go to DMV, you can technically change it to wherever you want for like a small fee.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Part of me kind of wants to change it back to Modafferi.
There you go.
And I'll just tweet at Roxanne, my cousin, where are you?
Yeah. She'll totally have no idea what the fuck reference you're making and be like, well,
I won't be. I mean, not like
accent,
that,
bro.
you know. Yeah, not like that. Like, what the fuck is this? You know?
For sure.
More or less like, no, cousin, I'm going to lend you my energy so you don't get murdered by Macy Barber.
Oh, not.
I'm kidding. No, you know what? Actually, Roxy's got a good chance she gets that shit on the ground. But then again, I don't really know Barber's jiu-jitsu. I have no idea.
I'm worried about Roxy getting head kicked. But outside of that, yeah. No, Roxy's top, especially she's gotten
She's got good elbows from top mount too.
Dude, her ground and pound has gotten nasty as fuck. I don't know. I'm not a big Macy Barber fan, mostly just because of her everything about her personality. But yeah,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'll give her a pass in that she's only like 21, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah. One other thing that was hilarious during that, John didn't play any interviews during that episode, which is pretty rare. However, he did play a clip of Anakin Florian podcast, in which he mentions, he's like, there's no good way to talk about Song Yadong without putting out all of the worst clips ever. And then he played a clip of John Anik and Kenny Florian talking about it, and it's just so many Yadong puns, and they're not intentional, but they're like, just like, oh, Yadong's going to go hard, and Yadong is going to really put on the pressure.
Yadong's going to penetrate early.
Yeah.
That just reminds me that
keep the pace. It's all bad.
It's like you already know they're going to just that someone's just not going to go too far, but just going to break, just just not care anymore when they go, oh, Yadong looks flaccid here, shit like that, or it's just like, come
100%.
on.
Although Yadong is fighting Cody Flowercock, as Conor Rebush refers to
That's
him,
right. So it's a battle of the cocks.
Yeah, it's some. I believe actually Conor even mentioned on Heavy Hands that it's some real.
You know what? The best matchup, and someone's probably if this is years ago when the video came out. Remember the video about the guy? His last name Myanus. Do you remember that video? So. Dude, okay, I'm gonna send this to you, and you're gonna laugh your ass off. Yeah, I'll send it to you, and during the break, you'll see why Yadong needs to fight Myanus.
Check it out.
Yeah. So that's what I had for the road show. Did you have anything else? Because I don't really. It was a weird week for me as far as I can't really. I can't just listen to podcasts while at work. Because I'm at a fucking brewery. It's not like I'm like, hold on a second, sir. Let me listen to some talking points. Oh, okay, yeah. I just West Coast IPA, sure. Hold on.
Right.
Right. Or I have like headphones in.
Oh, there's a hint, everybody. You want to figure out what brewery Chris works at? Look for a West Coast style IPA in San Diego. That'll narrow it down.
I know, man. There's only a couple of them.
Yeah,
West Coast IPAs.
Literally every brewery in the city has a West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
So,
what about sours? You guys do sours?
Actually, that will narrow you down. You better not answer that question.
Yeah, right.
That's funny. Anyway, yeah. So I'll go ahead and jump into a podcast that I had to catch this week. Which actually I mentioned at the top. It's Pull No Punches, episode 45. This is their last episode. Of course, this is the show hosted by Kajan Johnson, former UFC fighter and former activist with Project Spearhead. And it was hosted with him and Shaq, who I always can't remember any other part of that dude's name. He's a journalist out of, I believe, the west coast of Canada. I want to say he's out of Vancouver, but I'm not positive. I believe they both are, but I'm really bad at geography, so don't quote me on that by any means. But yeah, they just talk about how they're ending the show and kind of doing it for the last 2 years. And they just kind of reflect back on some of their favorite stuff that happened, kind of the origin of the show. And they say they're going on an indefinite hiatus for now, just because neither one of them really has the time to be doing it every week. And they say maybe down the line, if they can get some like sponsors or something to try and make it to where they can get people to do all the like the grunt work of editing and posting and all that stuff. Which fucking, I hear you, bro. As someone who does all the editing for this show, I can tell you, editing is a bitch. So
yeah, and I appreciate your editing tolerance.
No, yeah. Chris just shows up and looks pretty. I'm the one that makes everything happen and has a goddamn meltdown while trying to do it. But
say, hey man, I pay the subscription and some of the fees, you know.
Yeah, you pay about half, but yeah, definitely. Anyway, but yeah, it's a really good episode with them, and I'm excited to see what they have going forward. While they're not going to be doing a show, I bet we will see them guest on more stuff. If nothing else, I think Shaq will start appearing alongside more media people. I know he's been working a lot with the people at Bloody Elbow. He just recently started working with them, so something to keep an eye out for. And I know Kajan is starting to train dudes out of his gym because he has a TriStar out of, I think he has TriStar Vancouver, if I'm remembering right. So it'll be interesting to see what they have coming up going forward. And it sounds like Kajan he's essentially retired unless somebody comes to him with a good enough offer to make it worth his while. He's essentially retired for the time being and focusing on coaching and stuff like that. So good on those guys. And I really like that show. If you guys want to go back, some of the better episodes they talk about during this one. So if you're at all interested in some of the cooler guests they've had, that everybody from, Leslie Smith to Angie Hill, everybody that's dope in the MMA sphere as far as I'm concerned. So definitely worth your time and worth checking out.
Nice, man. Yeah, I remember I listened to a couple episodes of that before. I'm definitely going to catch their final episode. I feel like a final episode of most shows, I would imagine, has their best effort. Not that you need to have an effort, but, there's kind of it's more authentic, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let's see. So I actually had another catch because you didn't have any other catches, right?
MMA Junkies was pretty solid.
Oh, really? I didn't catch it.
Yeah, it was more or less kind of like a light preview of the card, but they also had a lot of talk about the men's featherweight division and kind of where that's at right now after Brian Ortega's ACL partial tear injury.
Gotcha.
They talk about Calvin Kattar needing another fight. He's in a great position now. They also talked about Jose Aldo and how he looks like absolute death right now.
Yeah, it's not
trying to cut to 135. I know Darren Till tweeted something about it, and then McGregor's like, "No, I disagree. Aldo's fine." Like, come on, like.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I think.
Do you think he makes it to the fight? I don't see how.
Maybe, man.
And even if he does make weight, I honestly think Marlon Moraes probably sleeps him.
Yeah, actually, we have a clip coming up that feels very similar to the way you and I both do about that, which is I don't know why someone like Aldo, who his entire game is predicated around being the sharper, quicker dude with better reaction time and better, like, just using lights out takedown defense all the time. I don't know why moving down to the division. Well, you guys will hear the clip, but it seems like a bad move already. And also, he used to have a fucking terrible time making 45. So I don't know how all of a sudden 35 is going to get better. But what do I know?
Well, yeah, because I remember for the longest time, he's like, I want to go to 155. I want to go to 155.
Yeah. For the longest time.
Yeah, I want to chase Connor at 155. Well, and I was like, I would love to see you fight him at 155. That'd be fun.
When he was talking about 55 before Connor, too, just because he was having so much trouble making 45.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw Frankie Edgar, who's already supposed to be fighting Corey Sandhagen, is now fighting Korean Zombie.
They say he's fighting both of them.
So the only way that happens is if Frankie takes like no damage or die.
Sandhagen fight, which he is absolutely
no. The Korean Zombie fights first.
Is it?
Yes, that's the problem.
Either way,
it's on the 21st.
I think he loses both of those.
No, I do too. And I like Frankie Edgar a lot, but it's just Frankie Edgar honestly should have been at bantamweight 5-6 years ago.
No,
Frankie, you don't think so?
Should have never gone to bantamweight. Another dude who his entire game is predicated on being the quicker dude.
Oh yeah, well I see. Yeah, that's true. Because he's just I feel like he could have won a decent amount of fights at bantamweight though in his prime.
Maybe. I mean, there wasn't really a bantamweight during his prime. Is the problem? I
mean, he beat Prime Uriah Faber even though that was at featherweight.
Yeah, well, prime, but yeah.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, that's true. It wasn't really prime.
Yeah,
Faber.
Like WEC Faber.
It was
prime.
It was Faber. Yeah, it was Faber getting title shots because of his name, Faber.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Faber's fighting Peter Yan. Good luck.
Speaking of people just getting murdered, oh man, some of the fucking matchmaking right now. So I think that was an MMA Junkie episode 3007 you were talking about, 3007. It sounds like a solid one. I'm going to have to go back and give that a listen.
Yeah, and then their last thing that they were like, and everyone's going to be parroting this until next week, how come we can't get any actual decent trash talk between Usman and Colby? It's like, dude, that's like the two worst possible people you could ever listen to in a fucking conference. Just stop.
Also,
it's not going to happen.
Maybe it's just me, but like fighter trash talk is generally just so fucking boring. Does nothing for me because most of them I'm not interested in what most fighters have to say when it comes to about like witty shit about their opponent. Like 90% of the roster is not going to handle that with anything interesting. So I don't know. I like all the trash talk, stare down stuff does just a fucking nothing for me. I'm also that dude who doesn't care if they're mad at each other or not, unlike most people, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, really? Does there have to be beef? I mean, I guess that makes it a little more exciting.
Generally,
but...
it makes the fight worse. Generally, they fight worse if there's beef.
Yeah, the only fight recently with legit beef where it was a good fight was Conor and Habib, I guess.
Was it a good fight?
That's what I'm saying, I guess. So, it was good until it was good
if you're a Habib fan.
Yeah, it was real good if you're a Habib fan.
Or if you're an alleged victim of an Irish sports star, you might feel pretty good.
But Conor won one round, bro. Keys. First time Habib ever lost a round.
Yeah.
Only Conor's done that.
Not true, because Gleason Tebow definitely took at least a round off Habib, but yeah.
I know, people don't like to acknowledge that.
Well, that's because technically on the scorecards he didn't somehow, but oh yeah, man. Anyway, so let's see. I actually had another couple catches that I'll crank through here briefly, but Loudmouth MMA, the 500th episode, they just released this week, and it's fucking awesome. If you guys are interested, so the Loudmouth MMA network is a network of a whole bunch of shows. Obviously, they're 500 episodes in now across all of them. And they're the guys that do Between the Links. They have the NSFW MMA show. They have the Breakdown show with Marcel Dorff and the other co-host whose name I forget. There's too many dudes and I can't remember all of their names to tie to which shows. They do MMA Yesterday. They have a whole bunch of shows on that network. All Angles, I believe, is another one. But essentially, for this episode, for the 500th, they had everyone come on and at the same time. And they just kind of like talked about the shows they do. They talk a little bit about kind of how the shows got started, the parts they like, their favorite parts of the shows, and stuff they want to improve about them. It's just a great way to kind of get to know all the shows on the network and kind of get a feel for stuff you might be interested in, hosts you might like over others, that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend it because there's a lot of those shows that I really enjoy, especially Between the Links. I think hands down Between the Links is going to blow the fuck up. It already is blowing up because originally they did it around the cage, I think is what they called it. And it was a little bit looser back then, and it was a little bit angrier, I feel like. But once they reformatted to Between the Links, and they've really upped some of the journalists that they've had on as guests, it's great. It's just a great fucking show, and I'm surprised no one, like, apologies for the pun, but no one took the bull by the horn with that one, and it kind of created an MMA version of Around the Horn, so... it's just this episode's a great episode to kind of get a feel for all the different shows on the network, and it's just a fun one overall. Towards the end, if you don't like people being happy about them doing their own shows, it could get a little self-congratulatory, I guess, but it didn't bother me at all. So I highly recommend checking it out. I think it was a fun way to kind of get to know everyone on the network and all the different shows they have.
Nice, man. Yeah, and I think that's always, like you said, you think they're going to blow up. I think it's great if there's a show that has a network with, whether it's spin-off shows or related shows or co-promoted shows. I think that just creates, what is it? Just, I guess, interrelationships between podcasts.
Yep.
I think it's smart.
Yeah, 100%.
Good synergy, whatever word you want to use.
Exactly, bro. Fucking networking, bro.
You know what? One might even call it symbiotic. Just kidding.
Oh, shit. Yeah, man. So that was really good. And then the other catch that I had for this week, I actually tweeted out about. So I've talked about Zane Lamprey's shows.
That's right. Fuck, I forgot to listen to that. God fucking damn it.
I did text Chris telling him he has to listen to it, but I had a feeling he wasn't going to. That's why I capitalized.
Ironically, I was probably a little too drunk.
To be fair, when I texted you about it and when I listened to this episode, I was also pretty goddamn buzzed. So I was at least a couple double hazies. The Fear Movie Lions I was drinking this.
Oh,
so
I was
hazy.
I was probably just like this. What it says? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much how the text to you went. But I've talked about Zane Lamprey's podcasts and TV shows in the past, stuff like Four Sheets. I'll look down because I was going to check and see if I was actually wearing a Four Sheets shirt. I'm not. Papa Vodka presents the man. But Yeah, so Zane Lamprey, he has the show 4 Sheets. He did 3 Sheets in the past, kind of like travel drinking shows, that kind of stuff. And he has this podcast that has been on hiatus for a bit. It's been a bit. I want to say at least a couple months. And I was kind of curious because they went real radio silent, and they've been doing a tour where they're going around and doing stuff because they have a clothing company called Adventure with a 3 for the E and the first E in Adventure, where essentially they plant 3 trees for every purchase. Whatever, it's a cool thing. But they've been pretty radio silent on their podcast, and then this just dropped out of nowhere with zero fanfare, and it kind of caught me off guard. And then I noticed there is a logo and advertising difference in the show immediately, and I would like to first off congratulate Zane Lamprey for leaving Podcast One. The best move anyone's made in a while. Fuck Podcast One. Podcast One is the worst network around. Shouts to Chael Sonnen. If you guys want to know why Chael Sonnen's show is garbage and has too many ads stuffed into it, that's Podcast One, which is, of course, just the radio network, or the radio studio, or the radio conglomerate, whatever you want to call it, Westwood One. It's the same fucking thing.
It's like, Podcast One is garbage, and for that, you're welcome.
Exactly. Yeah. Fuck Podcast One. Also, they've just kind of fucked over a lot of people that I've known them to fuck over enough people I know personally that I'm like, yeah, fuck that company. But I'm glad to see him leave. But what was really cool about this episode, so it opens with Zane and Mel, his wife, who, by the way, Smoke Show from San Diego, so shouts out, and Steve McKenna hanging out on Skype, and they're just talking shit. They're talking about how Steve was an extra in Lincoln, and he just looks confused all the time. It's real dumb. He would have to know the show to know it. But they had Tito Ortiz on, which was really interesting.
Wait, this is on his show they got Tito on?
Yeah.
Was he, drinking with them or some shit, or is this during,
So they weren't drinking, as far as I know. Well, especially since Tito's in camp, he's fighting.
I was gonna say, yeah, he's fighting a fight that should never been happening, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like most Tito fights nowadays.
I was just about to say, pretty much.
And if you ask Tito, he's like, well, mathematically, I feel younger, so therefore I'm 10 years younger than him. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, he works out 6 days a week, all 5 days of the week.
He works 25/8.
Yeah, he stays beasting.
Yeah.
But it's just, first off, it's just cool for me that Zane's show is back. It was weird hearing fucking Tito Ortiz interact with Zane's dog Bodie and all this shit. It's just like a weird crossover of podcast worlds that rarely happens. And Zane also, by the way, knows fucking nothing about MMA. You could tell because they said that he keeps referring to it as Tito's upcoming UFC fight.
That's great.
Yeah, it's real good. But it's just a good episode overall. It's honestly one of the best interviews I've heard with Tito. Tito isn't stumbling over his words and sounding like an idiot. He is doing the thing where he's just kind of running through some of the narratives he likes to put out during interviews, where you're like, no, you kind of, he's like, oh, I kind of lost to Frank Shamrock for the title, barely. It's like, well, I mean, he tapped you out in the 4th round because you gassed, but okay. But he talks a lot about his childhood. He talks a lot about his mom being an addict, him being an addict for a while. Talks about not really knowing his dad, not liking his dad growing up. He talks a lot about back surgeries, actually, since Zane's wife Mel just recently went through a pretty legit back surgery. So it's just really interesting interview with Tito from somebody who isn't. It's somebody that's not at all inside the MMA world, so I think it gave Tito a little bit more comfort to not worry he was going to say something stupid that someone was going to make fun of him for and just jiff into eternity. Yeah,
there's just no outside pressure. He doesn't have any pressure about MMA questions or anything related. So
yeah, Borrachini and Depot was not going to be jiffing the entire interview, so he felt better about it. But it's just a really good interview with him. He talks about working at the porn shop Spanky's XXX and how it was his first sponsor. He talks about being on The Apprentice back in the day. He talks a lot about like going to therapy and all kinds of shit. So it's just a really, really good Tito interview, and I was just surprised. And then the most mind-blowing news of all time at the end of the episode, evidently Steve McKenna is sober now. That's like if you were to just randomly find out, like, oh yeah, Bert Kreischer's not drinking booze anymore. He just stopped for a while. It's like, it's fucking mind-blowing news. So I don't know. That's crazy to me. But yeah, overall, really good episode and a great Tito interview. I can't recommend it enough.
Nice, man. I'm gonna have to check that out. That reminds me, I can't remember what fight card it was, but I remember Blake, you know, who we know, he was doing he rode his bike from here, San Diego, to Los Angeles. Guess who he ran into in Huntington Beach on the bike path?
Tito Ortiz?
Tito Ortiz, who was wearing a MAGA hat.
Oh, yeah. No, he was wearing a MAGA hat at the interview with Zane Lamprey.
Oh, my.
Well, he because he's like,
well, I know,
I know,
The
Apprentice
I know,
and stuff.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Fucking.
Him and Colby would be great friends, right?
I mean, he's kind of doing Tito's gimmick now that I think about it.
Dude, I feel like Colby
gimmick.
would meet Tito and be like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? He's like, damn, I'm just kidding.
I feel like Colby was like, hey, I should just act like Tito Ortiz.
Yeah, evidently.
It kind of actually, the more I think about that.
Wait, should I make the joke I was going to think of right now? Okay, yeah. Well, to be fair, Colby and Tito both know porn stars. Or at least, well, yeah, I was trying to think of it.
I mean, Tito at least actually knows them.
Well, yeah, he rents them.
Yeah, Colby, they both rent them, depending on which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, seems like a good place to move on. Speaking of stuff we should skip, Chris, do you have any MMA podcasts that you recommend people skip this week?
Most of Ariel Helwani's show.
Oh, good. I did, like normal.
I skipped UFC Unfiltered because Chris, the producer's gone.
Oh, but you know where he is, right?
Yeah, I remember you mentioned this before, but I forgot.
He's at The Athletic. He's doing all their podcasts now.
Yeah, great place to be.
Yeah, he's actually really good on Man and the Myth. He chimes in quite a bit on that show.
Let's see. What else? Believe You Me is hilarious. It's not a skip. I mean, they have legitimate breakdown of Habib and Tony.
Yeah,
and then they talked about
like an honorable mention.
Yeah, but I don't really have any skips except for Ariel's show, where he just always makes it about WWE. I don't know. He spins angles and shit, and it's like I don't know. What was it last week where he fanboyed over Gina Carano finally being on there? I don't know.
To be fair, that was cool. That was kind of a cool interview with Gina.
Yeah,
where like she's like
I won't knock that.
She talked about the fucking time Dana White accidentally texted her saying this bitch is being difficult, and then in classic Dana White fashion, just did like a no, I meant that. It's classic. Wow. Dana White ruins everything good.
Fucking tomato fuck.
Yeah.
Ariel, his show is wow. Yeah, just to be fair, dude, just like when did we start doing this podcast? Like 3 years ago now, something like that.
2016, I think.
Yeah, like I remember. I was fucking stoked. I was jazzed to listen to that guy's show. You know,
used to be good.
Yeah, it was real good.
A lot of affiliations, and he started losing all credibility. Fucking Access Ariel.
I don't know. He's got that Disney money now, right? Just kidding.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, he had that Fox money to also, which people don't like to talk about.
Yeah, I know. People don't actually acknowledge that, do they?
Yeah, where he was just straight up paid by the UFC, essentially.
Yeah, you look at it that way.
I mean, no, his checks came from the UFC.
No,
through Fox, but they actually came from the UFC. It's a fucked up story. Yeah, so I don't really have a skip this week either. If you wanted to say it was a skip, I would say Joe Rogan Experience. or the fight companion with Brendan Schaub, because like they barely talk about fighting, and then when they do talk about fighting, it's just Joe Rogan saying that he wants Francis Ngannou to go to boxing, and Brendan Schaub saying he wants to see Conor fight, or he wants to see what the fuck did he say? Oh, you're right. He'd rather see Jorge fight Nick Diaz or Conor than Colby Covington or Usman. Which is like, what are we doing? The fuck are we doing? Also, they talk a whole lot about Colby's gimmick during that. They just keep saying they are so fucking casual in MMA at this point, which is insane considering how much they're around it. But they're just pure fucking casuals at this point. It's ridiculous. And Rogan
it's upsetting.
Yeah, Rogan's now just started, every time he talks about it, mentioning the thing where Colby, because he was worried about getting cut around the Damian Maia fight, he started talking mad shit. Which is like, yeah, bro, we've talked about this like years ago. Why did you all of a sudden start repeating this over and over again in the last couple weeks? Yeah, I don't know. It was eminently skippable. Yeah, that's really the only skip for me. I really didn't have anything else. Because honestly, I didn't listen to the other ones I didn't want to hear over the break, so.
That's what we should do, too. It's like, skip also, or should this be super skip? Should super skip just be like you didn't listen to it at all because you saw it and you're like, nope?
I mean, you want to just go ahead and call out Phoenix Carnival on UFC Unfiltered like that every week? Because that's exactly what my pick is going to be every time.
Yeah, that for me, a super skip is anything that has a WWE someone on it. Yep, don't care.
Yeah, fucking Becky Lynch's name anywhere in it.
Don't care at all. Basically, anything that's not MMA. If it's boxing, I'll listen to it because I like boxing.
Yeah.
Just by the way, not trying to say don't watch a UFC fight tomorrow, but if you do have the extra cash, you go all in. That fight that's happening tomorrow, which I don't really know what the fuck to think about that. Yeah,
it should be fun. Nobody really knows where Joshua's head is at this point because there's a lot of questions around.
And I'm not one to ever fat shame like most of the fucking trolls on the internet. I'm not gonna. I would just make this subtle joke. What team dad bod versus Joshua, but it's not even accurate. The guy's a fucking championship level boxer. It's like, dude, you can knock that dude out. Like, come on, like.
Oh, for sure, it's big boy season, dude. You already know.
Yeah, that guy. Like, he weighed in at like 283. I'm like, fuck, that dude's big. Damn.
Hilarious.
So, I don't know how that fight's going to go. I kind of am leaning Joshua. I think he's going to just keep his distance this time. But who knows? Joshua kind of looks like a quitter, but I can't talk shit. I'm not a professional boxer, and that dude would kill me. He would literally kill me in one punch. So.
Well, he does have. He is like twice the size of you, to be fair. Like, almost literally.
Yeah, what is he, 6'6"?
Yeah.
So he's literally a foot taller than me, and he weighs...
He has at least 100 pounds on you.
He's 237, so...
Okay, so almost 100 pounds on you.
Yeah, I'm about 147. So basically almost, he's a foot taller and almost 100. He's a foot taller and 90 pounds heavy.
Yeah.
So,
there's some fucking...
A foot taller and 90 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, he'd
definitely smash you for sure.
He would. In lots of different contexts, he would smash me for sure. Yeah.
Oh, save the Yadong puns for later.
Yeah, right? Yeah, my dong wouldn't be ready.
Well, on that note, do you have any MMA podcasts you recommend people can't miss this week?
I do not, but I do remember my Well-Rounded whenever you want to do that.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. I actually had a couple can't miss episodes. First, I wanted to shout out Well Actually, Fernanda Praches' podcast. Man, she's been putting out some fucking fantastic content lately. On the weeks off, she put out episodes with Laura Sanko, called Laura Sanko for Dummies, which just kind of, she hangs out with Laura after the UFC Sao Paulo card in Brazil, the Sunday after, and they just kind of hang out and talk kind of just about whatever. They kind of go through Laura's early fight career and her having to drop out of her second fight because she got pregnant, and kind of the process for going through the Contender Series and Invicta. Laura has some like really honest and cool. Fucking no other podcast I feel like gets anywhere near the conversation topics that show does. Like Laura talks about postpartum depression and dealing with that after having a kid, and like she gets into really like deep details on stuff like how she felt like she was supposed to have like more of a connection than she automatically did when she first had the kid, and how that's like a normal thing, and kind of having to process all that. It's really interesting, and a really just kind of fascinating conversation that, again, no other MMA podcast is going to be going anywhere near. So I just found it very cool. She also talks a lot about her process for preparing for the Contender Series and Invicta, and the idea of imposter syndrome and all that. She also talks about all the fucking crazy jobs Laura Sanko's had over the years, which she's done pretty much fucking everything, from venture capital to being a pianist to fighting to now commentary. She also she's done all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's just really interesting episode. They also talk about how Ozzy and Fancy are kind of on a hiatus, just because Laura Sanko, especially nowadays, is traveling so much for the UFC and working so many weekends that, like, when she isn't home, she tries to actually like be at home and not be worrying about doing a show in the gym with Megan or anything like that, which is fair. I do miss the fuck out of that show though.
Yeah, no, that was a fun show. They played
sure.
well off each other for sure.
Yeah, I really liked it. So that was a really good episode. And then Fernanda also on the break had an episode called Deep Stuff with Rodrigo del Campo, which is, Rodrigo is a dude who I believe he works at I don't know if he actually works at the Ocho or if he works at the equivalent of the Ocho in Mexico, but it's really interesting hearing his take on the Mexican fan reaction and the Mexico City card, and just kind of how he was unfortunately not really surprised at the reaction from the Mexican crowd. And it's just a lot of interesting conversations just kind of around how all that was handled. Also some of the homophobia that not only happened at that event, but also stuff like Jorge Masvidal's semi-homophobic tweet recently, and just how homophobia is generally kind of entwined in Latin American culture. So, like, again, extremely interesting conversations that I'm not hearing any other MMA podcast go anywhere near.
No, I think that's a very, very important thing to address. I mean, as far as homophobia in Latin American culture, I can't speak on that because I'm not Latino myself. But if I were to assume just in sports culture, I don't know if you've been to a soccer game. I remember, but the whole, hey, puto, and puto has a lot of different.
They actually address that.
You can contextualize puto in a lot of different ways, but usually it means like a pansy or pussy or a faggot, if you want to be literal. And, because I remember during even like the FIFA World Cup, Mexican fans got chastised heavily for that. And even at Mexico City card just like a month or two ago.
Same thing, fucking Brian Ortega
and Cain Velasquez. Yeah, I understand it's part of that culture too, but still, it's like there's some things that kind of are outdated at this point, and I'm not gonna ever tell someone don't do that. If you ask me honestly, I'll just say I think that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's a bad look.
It's not a good look.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's just really interesting hearing these conversations that Fernando's able to not only bring on people who are educated on it, but they also just kind of have a discussion. It doesn't feel like browbeating or like self-righteous or indignant even. It's just trying to have an open conversation about shit that's uncomfortable, and I fucking love it. I think the sport needs more of it because we don't do it enough. And she's the only one I know of doing it, so I'm extremely excited about everything that show has been putting out. And they also, in that episode as well, Rodrigo opens up a lot about kind of mental health and dealing with anxiety and having meltdowns and stuff like that. And it's just a really honest, interesting conversation, kind of just about mental health and just kind of different conversations that I'm not hearing anyone else really have, at least in that deep of a way. So I can't recommend it highly enough. He also tells a great story about almost getting beat up by Verdum's brother at the Mexico City card, or UFC 188, I think it was, back in the day. And that John Morgan was the only one to report on it. Like, none of the other reporters mentioned it or anything. which is fucking wild. But it's some classic MMA media type shit. Because you don't want to lose access to Verdum, bro. But it's just, I really like the stuff Fernanda's been putting out. She also just today, I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole episode, which is why I'm not including it on this, just out of fairness, because I haven't caught all of it. But I listened to the first part, and she had an interesting episode kind of on the idea of attractiveness in MMA, especially when it comes to women in the sport, and how big of a role it plays and why that is, and kind of how maybe we should consider why that is the case more often, and there should be more discussion around it. And it's just, she's covering interesting shit no one's talking about. So I fucking love that show. If you guys are not listening to Well Actually, it is Fernando's podcast on The Athletic, but you can, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can search for Well Actually and it'll show up. So cannot recommend that show highly enough. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. And did you say I could? I mean, I should be subscribed to Athletic regardless, but
yeah, it's available to everyone. You don't have to be a subscriber to The Athletic, although I do recommend subscribing to The Athletic. You can find it anywhere. If you search whatever podcast catcher you use, it'll show up.
Okay, nice. Good to know.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It is, spoiler alert, I actually tweeted it, so it's not that big a spoiler, but it is, I'll say a front runner at least for my favorite MMA podcast, or my favorite new MMA podcast of 2019. It is, we'll say a front runner. I have to look back at the numbers, but I'm saying it's a front runner. And then another show that is much less serious, but so much goddamn fun this week. I don't know if this one I think technically came out either last week or the week before. This was episode 237 of Severe MMA, the UK MMA Prospect Show. And this is everything I like in an MMA podcast. Number one, Shawnee Podcast is a couple of drinks in because he just got back from an event. So already on board, because Shawnee Podcast is giggling and making goofy jokes, and it's hilarious. Number two, they go very deep into depth on a lot of the stuff that happened at both the Bellator London card and just kind of a lot of the European events and some prospects to keep an eye on. They talk about how SBG is kind of no longer being considered the best gym in the UK, and gyms like Team Renegade are absolutely blowing up. They talk about Bellator just forever booking MVP against Cans, and why the Bellator's European series may be in trouble and short-lived, especially with some of the dwindling attendance numbers and how big the fighter pay has been for those cards. They also talk quite a bit about the Cage Warrior card that happened. And yeah, it's just a really fucking good episode. And then if it wasn't already a great episode that I would recommend, at the end of it, someone wrote in and asked what podcast they listen to, and then they just talk about podcasts for like the last 15-20 minutes of it. So if it wasn't already going to be a can't miss episode for me, if you're going to be drinking or at least a little buzzed on air, you're going to cover a local or regional rather MMA scene that doesn't get enough attention, and then you're going to talk about podcasts at the end, that is a can't miss podcast for me. So highly recommend it.
For sure. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I love that show in general, but it's just a great episode. So everybody should definitely go check out Severe MMA episode 237 if you haven't caught it already. Cool, man. Did you listen to any new shows this week?
No, unfortunately.
So I caught a new show. It was a pretty short one, which I've been liking trying to catch some of the MMA podcasts out there that are like under like 30 minutes or less. So I feel like I don't give them a lot of love. All the shows I listen to are long as fuck. But there's a show called Ray's Omoplata Soup, which, by the way, first off, great fucking name for a show. This was episode 20. It's hosted by Ray Freeman, who is a guy on Twitter you guys would probably know. Oh God, I don't remember his tag. If you look up Ray's Omoplata Soup on Anchor FM, it'll say it. It's Darce something. I can't remember it off the top of my head. Anyway, he had on a guest that goes by the name of George Luna, who's an amateur MMA fighter, and they trained together at ATT Kansas. And they kind of just talk about how George originally got into MMA by seeing Conor fights and seeing Conor just kind of talk about MMA in general, and I believe it was after a loss, Conor gave some speech to Megan O'Leary or somebody in the back, and it just kind of inspired George to get into it, which I thought was interesting. So George talks a lot about that. They talk about training together, and they talk about how George evidently dislocated his knee in the gym one time. Like a dude fell on his leg awkwardly, and it completely dislocated his knee. So that is pretty goddamn brutal story. He talks about his patella basically being on the side of his leg.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's a pretty fucked up story. So it's a fun episode. I liked it a bit. Ray is definitely a fucking character and a half. That dude has some Midwest / Southernish twang to him, and it's just a fucking character. So I'm definitely gonna check it out going forward, because he definitely had some MMA Twitter people on a couple times, and it just seems like a fun one. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that going forward. But yeah, Ray's Omoplata Soup, one of the best MMA podcast names I've heard in a while. It's real good. And then so you said you had an honorable mention, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, for well-rounded.
Oh, it was for well-rounded, not honorable mention?
Yeah, no.
Okay, well then give me 1 second. Let me bang out a bunch of these. Okay, I'm just going to run through this shit because there's so many of these. And I'm just going to bang them out. Believe You Me, episode 182. As you guys heard on the intro, it's a pretty fun one. That was the one Chris referenced earlier as well. There's the clip that you guys heard about Bisping's feelings on MMA movies, which Bisping also hints that he's writing an MMA movie right now, which sign me the fuck up to watch that. We are 100% doing a commentary if that ever gets made. Or if we can ever get a hold of the script for that thing, we'll do a goddamn table read. And then they also talk about how Valentina is going to be in the Halle Berry MMA movie that's coming out in a bit, which is fucking crazy, and also seems like great commentary fodder. And they also do they create the Believe You Me drinking game, which they're going to play live on air next week, from what I heard. So, fucking, as I tweeted out this week, if you want MMA Podcast of the Year material, fucking go ahead and do a drinking show on your podcast, and that is a great way to get on the list. Let's see. Heavy Hands, episode 293, 292, and 291 were all fantastic. You guys are actually going to hear a clip in a minute from episode 293 where Phil talks about the brilliant reason Aldo is going to 135. Episode 292 was really solid. They had Ed Gallo on as a guest, who is the wrestling... He's the guy who covers wrestling for MMA... Sorry, not for MMA Junkie, for Bloody Elbow. And they talk a lot about Askren's wrestling game and kind of how it evolved through college and translated into MMA. And they talk about other kind of infamous wrestlers in MMA like Johnny Hendricks and some other guys, and kind of the difference between their actual wrestling game versus how it translates to the sport. And then 291 was just a solid one where they talk about how much they hated the Sao Paulo card. Submission Radio, episode 199, was very good. This was almost, if I didn't have so many catches already, this would have been one. They had Tyson Pedro on. They talk about how the Tyson's they're going to ramp back up the Half-Cast podcast, which I'm excited about. John Anik calls in, which was a really fun one as well. He talks about how he's going to maybe get a Game Bread tattoo, possibly on his neck, because John Anik's a fucking crazy person.
Yeah, that's a crazy bet.
Dominic Reyes Skyped in, which was a pretty good interview with him, and then Tito Skyped in as well and said all kinds of crazy Tito shit. And Ant Walker Skyped in at the end, talked about being a free agent now as a writer, and how Crave is, well, he didn't say Crave is a bunch of cheap bastards who don't pay people, but I'm saying Crave is a bunch of cheap bastards who don't pay people. MMA Depressus, Fall from Greatness was a great episode. This is, of course, the show hosted by Zane Simon, Connor Rebush, and Phil McKenzie. And they watched basically champs that just fell off a cliff. I believe the fights were Jardine versus Liddell, Barao versus Andre Ewell, and Matt Hamill versus Tito. And man, good episode, but there's some depressing ass fights. Gross Point Blank, the episode with Kayla Harrison was very good, talking about her overcoming abuse in her upcoming fight with Larissa Pacheco. That was super solid. The Man and the Myth put out 2 really good episodes. They over the break they did the fight flashback for WEC 53, where they kind of talked about how good that card was. And they also do the 2010s, which was they do a Best of the Decade award. So they did a Best of the Decade for KO of the Decade, Sub of the Decade, Fight of the Decade, Career Comeback of the Decade, that kind of stuff. So really good. MMA Stories, that's the show hosted by Jeremy Horn and Monty Cox that TJ DeSantis produces over on Between Rounds Radio. That show has been putting out some great episodes with a lot of old school stories, like of course, the infamous Lee Murray Tito street fight, and some other crazy Lee Murray stories. Really fun stuff they've been doing over there. Sixth Round Retro is back, and Eddie Mercado and Vic Rodriguez talked about UFC 50 on the one I listened to. Really good. JRE MMA Show episode 83. This is a good episode with Faraz Zahabi. I really liked it. Not quite enough MMA talk for me to put it as a catch or anything this week, but very good episode. And if you like Faraz Zahabi at all, I can't recommend it enough. Listen to that one. So, all right. Those were the honorable mentions that I had. So, Chris, why don't you let us know about this well-rounded thing that you've been hinting at since before we actually started the episode today?
Yeah, it's this hilarious page on Instagram. It's called Crime Faces. It's these 2 guys from Brooklyn. Most of it are street fights. But you can tell they commentate over it, but you can tell they're well versed in boxing and mixed martial arts, and it's fucking hilarious how they break down the fights.
Oh, really?
100%. You should check it out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's called Crime Faces, and then they have a backup page called Crime Faces X for some of the videos that Instagram flags. Is it
crime or crying?
Crime, as in like a crime.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I'll have to check that out. That sounds legit.
Yeah, it's funny as shit.
You know what? I will shout out for some well-rounded podcasts that are not in the MMA vein. The Laps Fan podcast is doing a series called The Trial of His Life, where they have 2 separate things going. They have the United States versus Vince McMahon series, where they read every single page of the court stenographer notes for the Vince McMahon steroid trial. They read through every fucking page of it in character, as characters. It's fucking really good. And then they did another episode alongside each of the days of that all 11 days or whatever it is of that proceeding, doing kind of just their normal kind of rehash on it. It's just a crazy series, and it's really good. Giant Bomb's been doing a worst songs of the 80s thing, which is real good. They've basically just been making a list of all the worst songs of the 80s. I believe Lady in Red is currently number 1, which understandable. It's a dumb thing, but it's really good. Fight Pass got updated. That's something I should have put in the news segment, not in this segment, but Fight Pass got updated. It's no longer using Flash, and it works so much goddamn better. Also, good news about Fight Pass, now that you just canceled it, Chris, they have all the old fights that were blocked for ESPN+.
Okay, well, maybe I'll we'll see.
Yeah, you can actually do tape study again on Fight Pass. Yeah. It's fucking awesome. And then the other 2 that I listened to, I actually went back and listened to the old Four Brewer. Oh, actually, here, let me get my Four Brewers glass up in the front of the camera before I say it. Four Brewers episode. I believe it was season 2, episode 48, which they recorded drinking a bunch of New English beers.
That's right.
Which I think I actually sent you a text about. But yeah, it's a really good episode. If you guys have not had New English beers, they are very good. I've been very high on that brewery lately. But that was a good episode about that. And I went back and listened to that because I also listened to the Beer Night in San Diego podcast, episode 244, who had the main brewer from New English, I forget dude's name. Chris, you probably know
it. I know he's from England. I would hope so. Simon? Like the most English name possible, right?
Yeah, it checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely Simon Pegg that
yes, Simon Pegg owns the English.
100%. But it's a really good episode. Simon is super personable, and they talk a lot about kind of why he runs the brewery the way he does, and it's a fun episode. And I've been very high on their Zoom Bar coffee Imperial Stout lately. The thing is like fucking 9%. It'll knock your dick in the dirt if you're not careful, but it's so delicious. I actually may have one on the next segment we have coming up. But yeah, that was really solid. So I've been enjoying those. Oh, we made it, Chris. We got through all those fucking notes. I had a lot of notes. I had how many? I guess I only had 8 pages.
Yo, I'm probably gonna be honest. I gotta stop. I really gotta go to the bathroom really fucking bad. Like I'm just saying right now.
Chris, great segue because we are going to go on break, and when we come back, we're going to break down this upcoming UFC on ESPN Overeem versus Rosenstrike card. So listen to this clip of Heavy Hands, and we'll be right back.
Liked by the sound of violence.
Well, that's out of the way. Oh, wait, I forgot. I was going to be like, we get to move on to something fun. But we decided we're going to talk about Marlon Moraes versus Jose Aldo. So it's really no better. Can we talk about Simone versus Font some more?
No. Tell me about how excited you are to see Jose Aldo making his cut to bantamweight. Isn't it what you've always wanted?
Yeah, it's exactly the direction in which I wanted his weight class change to go. It's not even the fucking polar opposite. I don't know.
Remember our rules of when you should change weight class. You know, if you're starting to lose on cardio and pace, but you're an invincible anti-wrestler who wants to strike, the logical thing for you to do is, of course, to go down to the lower division, particularly the one characterized as it is by nuclear-powered punchers with high pace.